Hey guys, the main thing I want to go over with this video is my personal thought on the state of the game going through PvE, Crucible, and the ever more elusive Gambit. First, let's start off Strikes, diving straight into PvE because you know my channel and you know what I do with stuff on Twitch. I spend most of my time in the PvE section, but starting from Strikes, this heavily needs a revamp. And I know we just got an announcement from the trailer for the next season that's happening next week. We're getting a new strike and two other strikes. Have flashbacks towards, especially, the Shank one, because, that was like struggle bus when it comes to Nightfalls. But honestly, the way the strike playlist is done and ran to players, it needs to be revamped because honestly, it is just there for mostly doing your bright dust bounties and getting your prism farm for your golf balls, which is one of the main reasons when people tell me it's like, I don't have the golf balls or these prisms to level up my armor to get to max. Then I remind them that they have this ghost mod that literally give you prisms when you defeat bosses and strikes. On to the next point. Well, next section of PvE, raids. Raids is the one section of PvE that they've done well and arguably is the best content in the game itself. There is very little thing that I hate about any raid in Destiny. The only exception I'll have is Garden of Salvation, just because I hate the raid in general, just because the mechanics mostly don't make sense. And back then, especially if you're on console, it was near hell to get anything done in that raid, especially during boss fight. But the main thing that honestly raids would need, and they don't need it, but the endgame community and the people who actually play the game longer than for a week actually benefit from it, is when they actually turn on contest mode as a toggleable thing, and you don't even get an emblem for it. It's just for the challenge itself, so you have something to do that feels like you don't have to be on autopilot the entire time. The last section of PvE is going to be, we're going to talk a bit about dungeons, because it's the other piece of PvE content that's in the game that majorly helps the player in any way, shape, or form. This content hasn't been updated in a while, but in next season it's going to revamp, because you have guns returning with new perks, which means these dungeons are going to be relevant because you can run them if you are a person who does not like to take part in LOG or just outright refuses to do anything LOG because you think they're not good enough. But dungeons is a great place, especially if you're a solo player, because they're not too hard soloing, but they're not too easy. So it's a perfect challenge mixture that is good for PvE. And with all three dungeons being back in like having weapon choices you can actually go into and have fun with, is great. But that's honestly, dungeons is like in the best spot right now for PvE content. Raid is close second just because there's not much you could do with it that can make it better, but strikes heavily need a revamp. Now onto my thought about PvP. I spend some time in PvP mostly because I enjoy PvP in Destiny 2, and Iron Banner Freelance has been like the most fun I've had in player versus player in a game played. But first, let's talk about the most casual entry point, which would be quick play. Honestly, this part hasn't changed too much. It's just the meta changes ever so often. We had the most recent change of any kind when it was Iron Banner, and we got freelance mode, which means you never had to fight a 6-stack again, which was like the best thing they added to PvP. A lot of people like to bash PvP just because stasis is around, but honestly, I rarely run into people using stasis, and when they do, they're not too hard to take down if you actually see them coming. The next part of PvP I want to talk about, which is not going to be talking about long because there's rarely anything in it, is the comp playlist. This mode has not gotten a lot of attention in the last few seasons ever since they stopped doing the weapon quests that required comp score. The main thing they need to do this, they need to give some type of reason to play the game mode. Honestly, the easiest part would be to put these weapon quests back in the loop, maybe one every few seasons, so we have something to go towards comp, or do anything besides trying to use it for a leveling system during the first week of a season or the first week of an expansion. The comp as a playlist as its own is fine. I enjoy it when I have a team, but then again, also still need some work because I need incentive to play something. Lastly, on PvP, we have this wonderful thing called Trials of Osiris, but it's in a weird place right now because one of the biggest issues with it is the lack of loot to chase. We had a little bit of this when Adept weapons got back in the mix, which was a great thing, having these specific weapons that had an additional mod slot and a whole new mod system for just adept mods, which are glorious on their own right. I know the loot system is getting better next season because we're getting a whole new set of Trials armor, which the Hunter just looks amazing. But you also have what is seen in the trailer, at least 2 weapons maybe. The submachine gun's maybe. We don't know if it's exactly Trials, but it feels like a Trials gun. But you also have the hand cannon that has, you know, the Trial eye on its scope, and it fires very similar to Annual Skate, which is still one of my favorite hand cannons to use. But the one thing that's going to take away from farming adept mods and Trials is if they keep all the mods that are in Trials, if they keep those and they keep those in the Grandmaster Nightfalls, because Grandmasters gain their own adept weapons, and assuming they're going to have adept mods, hopefully there's different mods in Trials and different mods in Grandmaster, so you have incentive to play both. Because if they keep just all the mods are in both activities and there's no reason to play either besides gear, it's going to lose value. And honestly, I want a reason to play Trials because, you know, I enjoy playing this game too much. For the topic of anti-cheat, because I know it's going to get brought up at some point, there's no one slight fire solution. A lot of people like to assume there is. A lot of people just like to say, oh no, but this game has like no cheaters. But there are cheaters, you just don't see them that often, or the game doesn't really care about it. If there was such thing as a one fire solution for anti-cheat, there would be no type of information that could ever be stolen in the world because everyone would use it. But the reason cheating and hacking are always going to be a thing, and no matter what type of industry you're going into, because people like to find workarounds. There's always a workaround. The only way to make sure this never happens or close to never happens is if you have a very large team that's certainly only focused on this one thing. And the reason I know this is because I used to work for a lot of companies handling this specific thing because I am a game designer. Lastly, I just want to touch up on one thing, which is this wonderful thing called Gambit. Gambit is the one mode that actually went through a lot of changes ever since it came out. Yet its basic mode, which was like so much longer than you actually had to be in a game. Then you went to Gambit Prime, which made PvE activities like Reckoning useful because you had to get armor from Reckoning to play on Gambit, and you got so many additional perks and buffs that you actually changed the way the game worked. And then you have what it is now, which is very similar to Gambit, but with a few things from Gambit Prime, which makes it in a way that I actually enjoy because it's so fast that you don't have to spend much time in each match. And if you're not, you don't have to spend more than 4 games on bounties, which is my main issue with previous Gambit iterations, is I would have to use specific exotics with specific subclasses just to get the bounties done as quick as possible. The fact that I actually spent more time in Gambit this season than I have while farming Prime armor sets in Gambit Prime and Reckoning kind of says a lot. And the fact that I also resetted the actual rank for Gambit 3 times this season is another feat. Anyway, guys, that's my opinion on the state of each section of the game. Do I think the game's gonna go anywhere? No, not really. It's always going to be around. There's always been Destiny killers, and the game's been in worse states than it is now. Anyways, that's my thoughts. If you guys want to come check out me on Twitch, I'm going to be live Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Thursdays is going to be primarily raid help. So if you need help with the raid or you've never done the raid and you actually want to do the raid, pop me on Twitch and we'll have fun. We'll teach you the raid. We'll teach you some mechanics. We'll teach you some fun times. Links for that's going to be down in the description. I love you all, guys. I'll see you guys later. Bye.